Hey, everybody. Fascinating discussion today. If you're in IT, you're probably used to playing whack-a-mole and being very reactive to IT issues, problems, challenges that arise. And with AI, that's all changing with folks like Lakeside. Michael, how are you?
Great to be with you today. Looking forward to the conversation.
Likewise. So maybe start with introductions, to yourself, but also who is Lakeside? What was the big idea behind founding the company?
Sure, I'm the founder of Lakeside. Lakeside's a cloud software company that's in the business of helping businesses and enterprise better serve their own customers, their own users, improve productivity, reduce cost, generally deliver a better computing experience for their people. And my background is as a software engineer. I started Lakeside in 1997, so it's been a while, and we've been through several kind of major product shifts over that long period of time. But the current one is in digital experience monitoring, which is really all about understanding how people interact with their desktop, laptop, Mac, whatever it is they use, what kind of experience they're getting, and how to make that experience the best it can be for them. At the same time, delivering that experience at the lowest possible cost, which is, of course, always a factor.
Yeah, people cost, CapEx, lots of challenges there. So talk about the big picture, the shift from reactive to proactive IT. Where are we? Where are most enterprises these days? Would you grade us as an industry in this trend?
Well, I think we're going in the right direction. Not as fast as I would like to see, of course, but if you think back to to way back days, right? People end user computing was pretty simple, right? You had usually a Windows desktop computer. You've got a standard set of software packages. They mostly run locally on the computer, and a fairly homogeneous kind of environment. But over the years, this has evolved to be much more complicated. There are many operating systems. There's Windows, Mac, Chromebook. There's devices like this one that all form part of that computing experience. And people no longer just work at an office. They might work at home and never at an office. They might be hybrid. They might work while they're traveling. The way they get their apps can be different. It could be installed, like in the old days, installed on your computer, but it can also be delivered from the cloud. There's multi-user experiences. It's a very complicated world these days. And so the old world of where we kind of put the software out there and hopefully it runs great. And if it doesn't, and I'll give you the software, if it doesn't work, give me a call at the help desk and we'll help you kind of fix that, right? I mean, that really is kind of where the world came from. And there's still a lot of businesses that, despite the fact that the desktop environment has changed so much, they still mostly kind of work that same way. And there's kind of a trend that's been developing for a while toward a more proactive approach. We consider that approach where we assume everything is good until the users call, and then we go work on that. That's a very reactive approach. If nobody calls, then we aren't working on any problems. If you look statistically, a very small percentage of problems actually ever get reported in that way. Think about yourself, right? I mean, you have a bad experience with an app. How likely are you to call the help desk? Like, probably not very likely. Most of the time, you live with it. You reboot your computer and see if it's better. And it's just because people are not in the business of being IT people. They have a job to do, and so if you think about what it would mean to be proactive, it would be understanding when people are having a problem and doing something about it without them actually having to call the help desk at all, about understanding that it's an issue. And ideally, it would be, instead of solving the same problem over and over and over for every person that calls with the same problem, you'd like to look out across your enterprise, if you could, and say, wow, a lot of people are having problems with this one app that are in this office. And if we could get to the bottom of that, and we could go find all the systems that have that problem and fix them all at once, like you can imagine, everybody wins, right? People are happy because they don't experience that problem and they didn't have to call the help desk. you get better productivity, you reduce the number of calls at the help desk. It's just kind of like one of these rare cases where everybody wins. Users are happier, the businesses save money, you get a better experience. These things all kind of are on the same side of moving toward this more proactive model. Does that make sense?
Oh, totally. Yeah, the virtuous circle, as we say. Of course, you're doubling down on AI and proactive IT, as are your peers. What are some of the biggest sort of misconceptions about using AI or Gen AI in IT, and what's the reality behind the marketing buzz?
Well, we're excited about these technologies. I mean, they're very real, right? And the right applications. The key is you got to figure out how to leverage those technologies in the business that you have. And one of the things that Lakeside is very excited about is that a key fuel for these technologies is having the right data. And data, that data collection excellence is really what, where Lakeside has kind of really dominated and done very well for a lot of years. We collect far more information than anybody else does. And when I say collect information, what I mean is everything that objectively measures your experience on that computer. So it's simple stuff like how much CPU is used and how much memory is used and how much is available. And do you have enough disk space? But it gets a lot more complicated. It's like, well, what apps are crashing and what's their crash signature and why do they crash? And what things do these connect to? What do they depend on? What is your Wi-Fi experience? What's your signal strength? How is your router performing? How are the cloud services working? What's the latency and jitter to the cloud? What kinds of devices do you have? Are you using a headset? Are you using a kind of an input keyboard and mouse device? All these things and way more all have kind of influences on that computing experience. And so in order to do what we do from a proactive model, we track like tens of thousands of these data points every 15 seconds. I think it's 10 or 12,000 data points per 15 seconds about how this computer is being used and behaving. And this is like this massive data. And I would say probably if you thought about it in the same way that that an airline thinks about their black box recorder, it's very much like that. Like there's a continuous recording of all this stuff going on. And most of the time you collect it, it gets old, you delete it, we didn't need it. But when you have a problem and you want to go back and find out what exactly happened, it's just hugely valuable. So anyway, we've collected this data for a long time for a lot of proactive use cases and software optimization and hardware right sizing, lots of other kind of use cases. But it turns out that when you want to use AI ML, one of the things that you really need is some good data, really nice, clean data. And so I read somewhere that the data for AI ML isn't oil, it's diamonds. And that really is the case. So I think the story for us starts with taking this data advantage and now being able to use new tools in AI and ML in order to take advantage of that and do more for our customers. So if I could maybe turn that into something a little bit more concrete, that's easier to, that's kind of a philosophical kind of a view. In a more concrete sense, if you thought about like you have a problem on your system and I've already got the instrumentation to know exactly what that problem is. Maybe I find out your system group policy hasn't been updated frequently. And I figured out already from my instrumentation, that's what needs to happen. But maybe now I'm working with an L1 help desk operator who may or may not be able to figure that out or even know what to do with it. And so if you think about some of these large language models where they've been trained on a huge amount of information out on the internet, they essentially have the knowledge of an expert systems engineer kind of built in. Well, if we take kind of what problem have we found, and we take kind of the key metrics around that, and we kind of know what those are, and feed those to an LLM and say, look, can you help us build for this L1 operator a very precise set of instructions on how to fix this problem? We have great success doing that. And so what happens is we kind of shift things left. So what it used to take maybe an L3 person to do, maybe can be done by L2, and maybe L2 work can be done by L1, and maybe we can actually use self-help and help that user to help themselves in some of these. So using, like, this is one example of how we could use an LLM in the background in order to make to take the data that we have and make it more useful to customers. And I think that's a generally useful kind of thing to do. We're also doing things that are more pure machine learning based. So, looking at spotting anomalies on computer, like take this massive amount of data that a human could never sift through by hand, feed it into an ML model, and be able to say, look, there's an interesting development. This particular problem has started happening today, and we can begin to predict that your help desk in the next day or two is probably going to take a lot of phone calls related to this particular thing. And we can do that before people are actually already reporting. So in general, like the new AI and ML technology combined with the right data and built in the right way into kind of serving that user is really exciting stuff. I have never seen anything as exciting in my lifetime of opportunity and what we can do to really make the lives of those end users better and to kind of lift some of that burden off of IT. And when you can lift off some of the maintenance work, you can really let people do a lot more in innovation. You think about if you have a zero sum game where you only have a certain budget to spend, if I can come in and make the maintenance work that you have to do, that support and maintenance and upkeep easier, that leftover money is available for you to go and innovate and do more things. And so really, I think there's a compelling business case around being proactive and using these new technologies to put yourself as a business in a position to really be that innovator in your own space.
Wow, so well said. Speaking of planning mode and budgets, we're in January, deep in those kind of discussions. But if you're a traditional IT shop, maybe you've done things the way they've always been done, as they say. I mean, how do you start down this road of, building an IT strategy that's more proactive? I mean, what do you start with? Is it an assessment, a pilot, an audit of your network? What does it take to be successful here as the customer?
That's really a great question, and you can imagine I get that a lot because, like, I can tell you the story. You look and say that's really a compelling story, but how do I get there from where I am, especially when I'm doing everything I can do just to respond to the service tickets that are coming in, and so that getting started is tricky. I would say the first thing you need to do is you need to instrument the environment so that you have available to you data that's an accurate representation of your whole EUC environment. So you need to understand, what systems you have. You'd be surprised. A lot of people, you say, well, how many notebook computers do you have? We go, we don't know. What apps do these people use? Well, we don't know. We know what we put out there, but and really the scale of these things makes that pretty understandable, right? I mean, these are in some cases some gigantic, hundreds of thousands of devices involved. And so I think you first got to get your arms around that. You got to understand what you have in terms of hardware, in terms of peripherals, in terms of connectivity, what connects to what depends on what. I think you have to understand what software is installed, and really importantly, what software is used. And, we do a lot of persona work early on, which is really understanding, of the maybe 100 applications that you have. I'll bet you that there's half a dozen that are the really key ones that make the difference in your day-to-day job. And understanding that persona, understanding your organization and where people fit, where they're located, where and how they work, understand how these apps are delivered, and then understand kind of all of the performance and resource metrics that kind of go into that and support that. I think that kind of general understanding that you get with digital experience monitoring is kind of step one. It's pretty hard to do anything, maybe impossible to do anything proactively if you don't at least get kind of to that level. And that's usually an investment. It's not a huge investment, but there is an investment to get that put in place and get it working. And today when we bring new customers on board, it's all cloud-based. So most of the heavy lifting that, if you go far enough back in our days, we used to install servers at people's sites and so forth. And there was some setup work. Now that's really, we provision a tenant for you and you're off and start it. So that's kind of step one. And, I think then step two from that is also tricky. And that's how are you going to get into this proactive mode when all of your time is spent in the reactive world, all of it, right? And I think that's usually the case. I mean, it is not the case that IT people are sitting around and drinking coffee, right? They are all doing everything that they can do in order to keep up and keep those users happy. And so there is like a commitment level that it takes to get started that says, I'm going to commit, a full-time person, maybe 2 full-time people to working on, using this data, what problems impact the most people, have the most impact, cause the most service tickets. And that's an incremental thing that you got to find a way to do. The great news, though, is that once you do that and you start solving your first problem and your second problem, it becomes self-perpetuating because the savings, I mean, ignore the happiness of the end user and their time for a minute. I mean, that's all there too, but you reduce, dramatically the number of tickets that are coming in at that help desk because you're not, when you go out and solve, this is an important problem and I find a solution and then I use the tooling to say, I want to deploy this fix on all of the systems that have this problem one time, right? The savings is huge at the help desk. And so eventually, as you kind of move down this path, the amount of resources that it takes you to be reactive starts to shrink, which means, assuming a zero-sum game, you can take that capability and put that into the proactive and do a little bit more proactively and a little more. And I don't think in today's world, you're probably not in a world where you're going to have zero reactive. That's probably not realistic. Maybe someday, but and maybe sooner than you would think. But I think minimizing that and getting this proactive side up is the key. And getting the instrumentation and data in place, and then getting the first couple of people to get started on that path and getting a win, I think is important. It's probably also useful to note that like the digital experience monitoring tools are used for a lot of things other than just kind of help desk and L3 engineering. Right? They're used to optimize your hardware refresh and to rationalize your software estates and be more green in your IT work and minimize your energy consumption. And there's lots of use cases that are involved. I would say, if you look at this and it's like a candy store, like I want all of those things, right? Don't start with everything. Pick something and get a win. It's much more effective to pick one thing or two things and try to get that first win in place. Because I think then you can start to shift the mindset toward being, a more proactive sort of outlook.
Brilliant. Speaking of customers, you have many customers, and without asking you to pick, favorite children, maybe talk about some of your customers, who they are, and maybe any anecdotes or stories or examples
Sure.
of them winning.
Sure. I would say, our typical customers are enterprise shops. They're going to usually have, thousands to hundreds of thousands of systems. I think our largest customer is managing, 500,000 plus 600,000 devices,
Wow.
notebooks. So some of them can be fairly large. We have some very small customers as well. We don't probably pursue that quite as much. I mean, you can imagine that when you get to a certain, if you're only at a certain size, you probably have more options. The problems of managing these estates kind of become exponentially greater as you go up that chain. So most of our customers will have, at least single digit thousands. They range from businesses to universities and healthcare, and we do a lot of work in banking. I would say probably banking, healthcare, manufacturing are probably our top verticals. But the same story. It's a horizontal story because importance of people productivity is important in virtually every enterprise. I would say in terms of use cases, we've talked about kind of some of the most common ones. The savings from some of these things can be really, really dramatic. We've had customers, find that they've got software installed and they have way more licenses than are actually used, right? And the savings can just be dramatic. Or people that look at their, they've been refreshing their PCs, just every 3 years. That's just what they do, whether you need it or you don't. And you find that some people in their work life demand a faster refresh cycle. Maybe that new AI PC capability for certain kinds of
Mm.
people would make a really big difference today. In fact, I'm encoding the video today for this with you in with a NPU. But there are other people that, the same hardware really gets the job done and there isn't really any advantage. So really optimizing where that spend goes can save, just millions of dollars for some kinds of customers. And so that, again, like the really cool thing is that it's an everybody wins scenario. Like the end user just gets the right equipment, they get the right software, if they have less problems, they're happier. The IT organization spends the money more wisely, maybe saves some money, through one or more of these use cases. So there's so many ways to go, and we've been around for since '97 in several kind of different product cycles, but you can imagine we've touched a lot of desktops along the way.
I bet. Exciting times. And what excites you about 2025? Roadmap wise, market wise, what's on your radar for the year?
That's a great question. I mean, I think, I hate to sound like everybody else and say, hey, Gen AI is exciting, but it really is. As a software guy, and I think I said earlier, I'm a software engineer. It's mind blowing what can be done. In terms of how much data we can process, what we can do with that data, and how well we can leverage the ability of these models to learn. I think the trick for us, and in fact probably more generally for most organizations, is figuring out how to take advantage of these technologies. I mean, we've all gone up and played around with chat and see the amazing things that you can do with it. But I think when you look at saying, okay, well, that's great, but how am I going to integrate that technology to make a difference in my business? I think that's a bigger challenge. For us, we've had some great wins last year in natural language processing. I mean, you can imagine we have so much data. It's a big schema. There's a lot of content. The ability to let the AI engine, do the heavy lifting, and you just ask it what you want to know in plain natural language, and the engine figures out how to get it, and then the rest of our software goes out and executes that plan. Like it just is game changing. And so I think, like in 25, I expect lots more use cases to leverage Gen AI in general, and machine learning. And I think we're all going to be amazed at some of the things that are possible. Things that even 5 years ago I would look and say, nah, that's not real. I think all of a sudden these new applications become very real overnight. And so to me, it's like it's a really exciting time. It's an exciting time to be in software, and an exciting time to be in IT, because I think IT can, instead of being like a cost center, I think it can be a real resource to the organization. And I think the new AI tooling will make people much more productive. It takes the mundane things, and they could be more automated, and let people spend more time being innovators and thinkers, and really change the game. So I guess that's probably the fast evolving AI ML world is probably the most exciting thing I see this year.
Fantastic. Well, it's going to be an exciting ride. Thanks so much for joining and sharing the vision and mission, and can't wait to watch it unfold.
It's been great. Thanks again, and great to chat.
Thank you. Thanks, Mike. Thanks, everyone, for listening, watching, and sharing. As always, take care.